Welcome back everybody, I hope you're all excellent. In today's video we're taking a look at the Tech 21 Sansamp PSA-1. Is this the rack lover's perfect solid state preamp? I'm just going to put that out there because for me anyway, when I was getting into rack gear, all I wanted to know about were really high-end digital effects processors and tube preamps. I looked at this and I was like, is it a tube preamp? No, not interested. And like a lot of things in my life, especially with guitar gear, I was just kind of plain wrong because this is a very, very capable standalone tube preamp. We're going to start out with some direct tones and then I'm going to get things dirty. We'll hear it on bass and we'll also hear it in a mix towards the end. I have to say at the start of this video, again, a massive shout out and thank you to my buddy Brian for sending me this unit to demo. He also sent me this purple monster down here, the Digitech 2120, which I did a video with recently. Go and check that out. But today we're all about the Sansamp. Let's get straight into it. The controls on this preamp are a little bit different to your kind of standard guitar preamp. We've got preamp, which is the input gain. Then we've got buzz, punch, and crunch, which essentially control the amount of saturation in the low, mid, and high frequency range respectively. Kind of like a Mesa Boogie Mark Series amp with the bass, mid, and tone controls being pre-gain. We'll get to that later. Then we've got an active EQ, so we've basically got a low cut or boost and a high cut or boost, as well as a level control, and there's also a drive control, which essentially is like a power amp distortion kind of simulation. So you've basically got preamp distortion, power amp distortion, you've got this pre-gain tone stack, and then a post-gain 2-band EQ going on. And you can store presets in there. Each of these knobs are actually encoders with like 256 storable positions. So you can actually go in and tweak this to your heart's content and save presets. I'm mostly going to focus on the factory presets though, because they're actually pretty good. The manual gives you a rundown of what they're emulating. Basically, there's some Marshall, Fender, and Boogie emulations, as well as some artist tones. And, you know, I got to give it to Tech 21. They sound pretty close and they sound pretty good as well. So let's start at the start with some clean stuff, DI. This is factory preset number 15, which is supposed to sound like a Fender Twin. That one I really like. The thing that jumps out at me is that it actually feels really good to play, especially in this direct recording situation. Factory preset 14 is meant to be a kind of tweed thing, and it does have that like 57 on an 8-inch speaker that's about to melt kind of thing. So I think that factory preset 15 for the kind of cleaner stuff is definitely my favorite. I would just happily record with that one without any tweaking. Once you start to introduce a little bit of grit, I find you have to kind of really get in and start to understand how the, what are they called again? There's the buzz, the punch, and the crunch, how they work. To do that, let's move over to a humbucker guitar with some distorted sounds. Let's move over to some crunchier tones. I've got my Les Paul plugged in here with some Martin A. Smith pickups, and this is factory preset number 1, apparently imitating a plexi kind of tone, direct to Pro Tools. So it's got a little bit of that, what I call mosquito high end going on there. I think this is where the built-in speaker sim kind of doesn't stack up to some more modern direct recording solutions. But we can fix that. I'm going to add some power amp simulation and an impulse response of my Marshall cab with 4 25-watt greenbacks. We get this. So for my ears and my fingers anyway, that is a whole lot more usable. What I would do is probably just bump the high-end control a little bit, because I know we're kind of running something with a speaker sim kind of into a power amp and then into another speaker sim. But you know, my mantra is, if it sounds good, it is good. And I try not to worry too much about those details in there. I just go in and tweak it. So we get this. That's kind of cool. You can make it really, really bright or really, really not bright with that high control. Similarly, the low end control, you can make it sound really tinny. Or really, really overblown and beefy, which is kind of cool. Then we can kind of play around with the distortion character with the buzz, the punch, and the crunch control. For example, if you crank the buzz, you kind of get a fuzz sort of thing. Or you can tighten it right up by bringing that down. Similarly, the crunch, or is this the punch? It's the punch control. If I crank it up, almost sounds like you've got a cocked wah on, the kind of Michael Schenker thing. Let me back that off a little bit, and this is what the crunch control does when you crank it. That's almost like having a treble booster in your rig. So I guess the way I think about this is like having those three different types of pedals on your board. You've got a fuzz that you can kind of blend in. You've got some kind of extreme mid boost or a cocked wah pedal, and you've got a treble booster in there, and you can kind of balance them out as you like. Furthermore, there is the drive control, which is meant to emulate power tube distortion. I'll bring that down. And that also kind of doubles up for like a sustain control. Crank it all the way up. You have loads and loads of sustain going on there. So that's what those controls do. I hope that makes sense. Let's hear this on bass next. This is where this unit really, really shines, in my opinion. You all know I'm a massive King's X fan. So factory preset number 35 here is a bass preset called King's X. And basically in the plugin version of this is the preset that I use for all my bass tones when I'm recording. And it sounds pretty awesome on the hardware. I'm in drop C, and this is Ryan's Music Man Stingray. There's also some very usable clean bass presets, like I think number 31 is one of my favorites. Something like that. Anyway, I cannot play fingerstyle bass to save my life, nor can I slap, so I'll save myself that indignity. But if you're a pick player like me and you like some grit on your bass, this is pretty much where it's at. I think all it's missing is a clean blend or a mix control. Now that we've heard some tones in isolation, let's hear this unit in a mix. I'm going to use the factory preset number 35, the King's X preset on bass guitar. And I've quad tracked the guitars with 2 different tones. This is the main tone. And then what I have done on this preset is basically taken that tone and just made it meaner and nastier. I have cranked up the buzz control, I've cranked up the high end, and I've cranked up the gain. It's kind of got a bit of rectifier thing going on. Just absolutely disgusting on its own, but with that main double and a little bit of the double with this particular tone in there, you get this. So that's the Sansamp PSA-1, and for a long time I totally overlooked this unit, basically because I just thought Sansamp, that's something that bass players use, and this thing doesn't have tubes, so it doesn't belong in my rack with all my 80s rack preamps. But how wrong I was. I love this thing. It feels great to play. The clean tones direct are really good. The bass tones are still industry standard, and if you run it with either a power amp and a cab, or a power amp simulation and an impulse response to kind of get more of a reactive thing going with it with the high gain stuff, I think it stacks up as well as anything else. I'm a big fan. I am totally converted to the Sansamp thing, and I can now see why so many people keep these in their studio. It seems that if you're a guitar player who likes tweaking, but not tweaking too much, the knobs on this and the presets and the kind of buzz, punch, and crunch layout, once you get used to their workflow, you can kind of dial in really convincing tones across a whole spectrum of styles pretty quickly. In that regard, it kind of reminds me of a Mesa Boogie Mark series. And if you've been watching this channel recently, you know I just got a Mark IV and I absolutely love that thing. Very similar thing. If you don't know how the kind of architecture works, it can be really frustrating. Once you know how to dial it in though, it's amazing. It's an inspiration machine. And I wouldn't necessarily put this on the same level as something like a Mark IV or a Mark IIc or a studio preamp, but for what it does, it's very good. That's just my opinion anyway. I'm kind of smitten with this unit at the moment. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you're a PSA-1 user or you use any of the other Tech 21 products and you have any tips and tricks you feel like sharing, please let us all know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. A massive shout out again to Brian for sending me this unit to demo. Stay safe, be excellent to one another. I'll see you all next time.